Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. Today I thought I would really shake things up and talk about HeroQuest. I will pause while you all make a sharp intake of breath, someone drops some crockery, and a needle scratches on a record. Okay, I'm never short of reasons to talk about HeroQuest, but today I'm doing something a little bit different. I am looking at what could be considered some of the weakest aspects of the rules and talking about some alternatives. And to be clear, I am looking here at the North American rule set, although in some cases the suggestions will also apply to the European edition. In some cases, the European edition is the suggestion. We'll get to that. Oh, and just to be clear for anybody who might be new to the channel, I love HeroQuest. It's a top 5 game for me. I am not claiming the game is broken or bad, and I don't think it needs to be fixed. I'm not even a big fan of house rules. These are just some opinions regarding a few rules that sometimes crop up in conversation as possibly benefiting from a tweak. I am not suggesting the tweaks here are even the right tweaks, but hopefully they will provide some food for thought. Let's get into it. Number 1. Roll and move. Roll and move isn't an inherently bad rule. In fact, I think it's essential for HeroQuest. Roll and move is bad only when it creates a repeated frustration that you cannot overcome in some way through skill or through mitigating your dice rolls. Consider Snakes and Ladders, where you need to roll the exact number to land on the finishing space, or Trivial Pursuit, where you spend most of the game hopping backwards and forwards over the question spaces because you aren't rolling what you need to land on them. In those cases, roll and move drags the game out to breaking point and creates a situation where your only solution is to brute force the game. You just have to keep butting your head against the problem until it resolves itself. But roll and move doesn't have to be that way, and indeed it isn't in HeroQuest. Rolling and moving in HeroQuest becomes part of a fresh problem you face each turn. When you need 6 movement to reach a monster but you only roll 5, what are you going to do instead? How are you going to adapt to that? Do you fall back to a doorway, block a key choke point to save a friend, or dip into your limited reserves of spells or items to come up with an alternative way to deal with the immediate threat? If you have fixed movement in HeroQuest, you take away one of the key elements of every skirmish. HeroQuest just doesn't have the same depth of strategy as many other dungeon crawlers, so you really don't want to remove what little there is. When you are sure-footed enough that you can easily calculate where you can reach each turn, you remove the sense of chaos that will be a big part of those brief combats in dark domains. You need that element of randomness, that moment that represents your dwarf tripping over his beard, or your elf getting a burst of speed at just the right moment to save her life. Of course, the monsters have fixed movement, and that's by design. They are part of the problem, elements of the equation. When you roll your movement dice, you get your random variable, and now you can calculate all your options. Can you outrun the monster? Should you even try? But while roll and move is a core component of combat, when there are no monsters on the board, it adds almost nothing to the game. All it does is make non-combat turns drag. However, this is one of those times where it's important to differentiate between the North American and European rules. The European version of the game is much more competitive. Heroes can throw spells at each other and block each other from moving through corridors and doorways. You race for treasures, so although you are working towards the same goal, you are still competing to a certain degree. For that reason, rolling for movement can still add an element to the chaos if you choose to play the game that way. But the American rules lean more into cooperation, so when monsters aren't around, there really is little reason to randomise your movement. Avalon Hill clearly thinks so too, because in the run-up to the launch of the Frozen Horror expansion, they released a downloadable mission on their blog that also included some new rules variants and rules clarifications. One rule they introduced was unthreatened movement. It's very simple. When there are no monsters on the board, instead of rolling for movement, heroes have a fixed movement rate equal to the number of movement dice they normally roll multiplied by 4. So if you normally roll 2 dice, you have a move of 8. If you only roll 1 dice because, for example, you are in plate armor, nobody ever wears the plate armor, you have a move of 4. I think this is a near perfect solution to the roll and move situation. You get all the fun and chaos of battle, rolling for movement as usual, but outside of combat you get a decent move speed, just above the average roll of 7 on 2 dice, to keep the game moving at a good pace. Furthermore, because everybody is moving at the same speed, seriously, take off the plate armor, the whole group gets to keep pace and you are never left waiting for someone to catch up. It's simple and it works. Number 2. Healing potions. There is a pretty major difference in the rules between the American and European edition of HeroQuest. In the American version, if your hero is reduced to 0 body points, you are allowed to immediately drink a healing potion to come back to life. In the European version, if you hit 0 body points, it's lights out. Considering the European game is generally the much easier one, I find this difference interesting. And I have to say, while I generally think the American rules are the more robust and sophisticated option, and the rules I now use all the time, when it comes to potions, it's possible they got it wrong. And I say that as someone who has benefited from the American rule, as anybody who has watched my Frozen Horror solo playthroughs will know. Being able to drink a potion automatically does 4 things that have the potential to harm the game. Firstly, it removes some of the fear of death. As long as you have a health potion, you know you are going to get a second chance if the worst should happen. Secondly, it makes using healing potions much less interesting. You don't need to judge the best time to use them, you just hold on to them until you die, and that leads to the third problem. Namely, it makes it too easy to stock up on healing potions. You never have that moment of, oh, I still have 2 body points left, but I better drink a potion just in case. You never end up using potions too cautiously, drinking one when you didn't actually need to, and that means you keep more of them over the course of a game. Finally, it makes healing potions way too powerful because they are always restoring you to life from a base value of 0. It doesn't matter if the monster that killed you hit you for 1 body point or 4 body points. Once you hit 0, you come back with however many body points the potion gave you. As a simple example, consider a hero on 1 body point. The hero decides to drink a potion to recover 2 body points and then is attacked and suffers another 2 body points of damage. The hero avoided death and finishes the turn on 1 body point. Now consider the same situation, but the hero doesn't drink the potion. The monster inflicts 2 body points of damage, the hero dies, drinks the potion and comes back on 2 body points. The hero actually ends up in a better situation because they chose to die. Seems a bit weird. Admittedly, this isn't an easy one to solve. I prefer the idea from the European rules, but admit that with the difficulty ramped up in the American version, it might be a little unfair to kill heroes with no chance of a Hail Mary, especially once you get to harder expansions like the Frozen Horror. Perhaps you can always use a healing potion at the point of death, but it only restores 1 body point, regardless of how many it would normally restore. This would still encourage you to use the potion in advance for maximum effect, but would give you a chance to escape the jaws of death in a pinch. Number 3. Searching for traps and secret doors. This is a nice easy one. In the American rules, searching for traps and searching for secret doors are 2 distinct actions. In the European rules, searching for traps and secret doors is combined into a single action. I much prefer the Euro rules in this instance. It is generally a given that heroes in HeroQuest will always take the time to search each possible location for traps, doors and treasure. There is no pressure of a time limit, so they can dawdle as much as they like. That being the case, separating out the search actions only serves to prolong the game. Combining the search for traps and doors keeps the game pacey and makes it quicker to get through the less interesting parts of the dungeons. As an added point, I should mention that as Zargon, I also only allow 1 search for treasure per room. This helps to speed the game up and ensures your heroes haven't managed to rinse the treasure deck for every potion and gemstone by the time they are out of the 3rd room. Number 4. Time to explore. One of the nice things about HeroQuest is it's a bit more laid back than some other dungeon crawlers. There isn't a ticking clock to race against. You have the time to rest, heal up, search a room for traps, treasures and secret doors, and rarely is there any risk to that beyond the occasional wandering monster. It's rare for a game to give you that kind of time. Normally there is some kind of restriction on how long your adventure should take, and in games like Dungeon Saga, those restrictions are often incredibly tight. I think there are probably a lot of people who enjoy HeroQuest's more easygoing approach, but what if your heroes start to take the mickey and you feel like your adventures are running a bit too long? There is a little house rule that I have used in some adventures with my gaming group that I think works quite well, because it does incentivize the heroes to keep moving, but not so much that you lose all the fun of exploration that HeroQuest provides. Basically, whenever Zargon takes a turn, if there are no monsters on the board, Zargon takes a skull token. When Zargon takes a 5th token, they can cash in all the tokens to draw the top card from the treasure deck. If it's treasure, the card is discarded. If it's a trap or a wandering monster, Zargon can play it against a randomly selected hero. This would represent the forces in the dungeon having time to respond to the presence of the heroes, Because the heroes have dragged their heels, the monsters have had additional time to prepare more traps, call more reinforcements, or move treasure to a secure location. Number 5. Fixed player order. So this is something that may not be an issue for a lot of people, while for other people it might be a minor nuisance. The fixed turn order. I think it's one of those things that is something that you are supposed to factor into your strategy, and more often than not it doesn't cause any issues, but sometimes it can be a bit inconvenient when you really want the heroes to mix up the sequence in which they activate. Here are just a few simple examples of when a fixed turn sequence can cause a problem. The wizard wants to cast a spell to give the barbarian a boost to a combat roll, but the barbarian is going to activate before the wizard. There is a trap blocking the way ahead, where the dwarf is the last hero to activate in the round, forcing the other heroes to either wait around or risk jumping it. And the worst one, the heroes have to waste time standing around next to a closed door, waiting until the first hero in the player order can activate to get the next stage of the game in action. Not only does this slow down the pace of the game, but also it means it's usually the same hero that gets the excitement of exploring a new location. If this is something that bothers you, I think there are 2 ways you can address it. The first is simple enough. You let the heroes operate in whichever order they choose. This gives them the chance to adapt to their current situation, giving them more options and opening up new strategies. The downside is you take away one of the challenges the game presents, and this in turn can make things just that little bit easier for the heroes. The second method is the one used in the Dungeons & Dragons Fantasy Adventure board game, and it requires 5 numbered cards. Every time the heroes explore a new section of the board, resulting in Zargon placing new enemies, you shuffle the 5 cards and deal 1 to each hero and 1 to Zargon. This is now the turn order and remains constant until the next time the heroes open a door or round a corner revealing new monsters. This keeps the game fresh and means that sometimes when heroes open a door, the monsters will get the drop on them. It works really well in the Dungeons & Dragons game, but the difference there is the heroes mainly move between rooms of monsters with no connecting system of corridors, so perhaps it might be a bit too clunky to adapt to the HeroQuest setting. Still, something to consider perhaps. And I think that's about it really. As I said at the start of the video, I don't believe HeroQuest really needs fixing, and there will be people who don't believe anything I have discussed in this video really needs changing. And that's fine. I tend to play almost every game rules as written. I'm not a fan of home rules and homebrews in most situations. And besides, HeroQuest already has baked into its design the best solution to any rules problem: Zargon. Okay, if you are playing solo or cooperative games with the companion app, Zargon isn't going to help you out, but if you have a really good real-life Zargon, you've hit the jackpot. HeroQuest is such a simple, straightforward game to play, it really is a clean slate for a Zargon player to go to town on. Zargon can introduce elements of roleplay, shake things up, make monsters tougher or weaker as required, add scripted events and encounters, drop in NPCs, and add all kinds of special rules for new or existing quests. The game may be about exploring deep underground, but the sky really is the limit. But I think that's all I've got to say about that, so let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.